Hi, I'm Brittany Pacheco.
I'm Franklin Cooper.
Marcy Gonzalez.
Amber Churchwell.
And we are the Watchers in the Basement. Welcome back to our channel. We are very excited to join you all this Friday as we continue talking about the latest episode. Well, I should not say the latest episode, but episode 3 of season 4 of Netflix series You. Y'all, I love this show. Like, what more can I say? Like, this show is everything. So the way that things are going to go today is that we'll be talking about episode 3 entitled Eat the Rich. And then next week, we're going to conclude part 1 of You with episodes 4 and 5. So Frank, I'm going to start off with you. Overall thoughts on this episode?
I mean, I'm biased, man. I love all these episodes. I like the murder mystery shit, man. I like how the writers are showing a different, unique take on like rich people, and like what I get from this is that rich people are just bored and they're just like doing bored, like they like doing shit that appeases them, whether it's illegal or not. And like the caveat of how these rich folks just like take death and murder like it's just a hobby, like it's just something that poor people do. It reminds me of that movie with the scavenger hunt movie with like they're murdering each other. It came like they had like 2 movies of it.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of the title. It'll hit me later. But yeah,
the guy who plays James Bond's in it. It just reminds me of like this boredom.
Oh, Knives Out.
Knives Out.
Yeah,
Knives Out and Glass Onion.
Yeah, Knives Out. Yeah, it just reminds me of like just rich people just being bored and like just find something to do, and like whether it's to the detriment of other people, they don't give a fuck. So that's what I get from this show. But I mean, I love it so far, and it makes Joe or Jonathan a kind of like an anti-hero in this season, which is a very interesting take, given that I want him to die in season 1 after he did what he did to Glenn. So character turn. So yeah.
God. Well, if he had died in season 1, we wouldn't be here today talking about Joe Goldberg / Jonathan Moore. So
I didn't say it made sense. I'm just saying at that time I was like upset at what he did to Glenn.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, Marcy, your thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, this episode kind of turned the season around for me. Episodes 1 and 2, I was just very like lukewarm about. I didn't really like care too much for them. Midway through this episode is when I started to think, okay, I'm starting to like it a little bit more. So yeah, this is the turning point for me. And then 4 and 5, I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah. Well, no spoilers about 4 and 5 just yet. We're just going to talk about episode 3. Amber, your thoughts?
Honestly, exact same as Marcy. I like the first 2 episodes. I didn't dislike them. I liked them. I was just kind of cruising though. And I don't know, something about the way that this was formatted and the trying to figure it out, and I guess the little mind games between the current you and Joe was really, really interesting, and that's kind of what's getting me. So I am very, very excited to see where it goes, and it starts to kind of get the ball rolling.
For sure. Absolutely, for sure. And I really do appreciate the turn of events that the writers took for this particular season. Every other season, of course, Joe's always been the one doing the bad thing and never really getting caught for it. But this time, like, he actually hasn't done the bad thing. He's being set up. He's being framed. He's got this stalker, which, getting right into the show, is that he's kind of ghosted his stalker / murderer. And that doesn't really turn... it doesn't fare well for Jonathan Moore, if you will, as he's teaching his class. All these students are getting alerts on their phone that, okay, now we know that Malcolm, their professor, has been murdered. An anonymous person sent in the missing pinky to the cops and blatantly put, this is not a kidnapping, this is murder. Like, and Marcy, with that kind of blatant statement being said, like, did you expect at all that this stalker was going to go to those levels to get Joe's attention?
No. And I have maybe like a couple theories of who I think the stalker is. No, I wasn't expecting that. And the episode just kind of, again, lends itself to us thinking that it could be different people just based on what the stalker is sending to Joe or Jonathan and when those messages are coming through. But no, that was pretty crazy when they talked about like the finger showed up at the newspaper, and then when the student was talking about like, oh yeah, my dad like works for the paper, and he said that it stunk really bad. So I was like, oh my gosh, they really did do this.
Yeah, and speaking of students, there's one student in particular that seems to really take the news very difficult about Malcolm's passing. And Frank, Nadia, like, is she at all someone that you feel at this point we need to kind of watch out for? Is she someone that could be playing the game, or is she just an innocent bystander who kind of just got wrapped up in Malcolm?
I feel like anybody of that intellectual ability in a show is somebody you need to look out for. Jonathan's very smart. He's very smart, very cunning, and it seems like every time, whether it's in class or just her giving him advice or vice versa, Jonathan's always impressed by her capacity to just know a lot of shit, and like just the high level of intellectualism that she has compared to her student body in class. So I think, and a lot of times in shows and movies like this, it's always like the intellectual based innocent person that you don't expect that comes from behind and bites you in the ass. And I think Jonathan does a great job of always keeping people like suspecting things of everybody. Like there's no stone left unturned. But for some reason, 3 episodes in, he doesn't see her as a threat, which leads him to believe that she could be part of a bigger ploy.
It's a very interesting theory. And Amber, when the news breaks about Malcolm's death or murder, if you will, there's kind of like this coined term that's being referred to the murderer as "eat the rich killer." And now, none of us grew up with, what's the term? The spoon, silver spoon in the mouth, right? I don't think I just saying. I know I didn't. So this term of "eat the rich killer," and people are like actually kind of standing by the killer, and they're kind of in favor of this killer. What did you make of that?
I was a little surprised with the direction that was going, but I think I'm more surprised that they're not drawing that much attention to it. It's like nobody, like Joe doesn't outright say anything about the people that are holding the signs. He never, in his internal monologue or to somebody else, never says it. None of them do. They don't acknowledge it. They just kind of go to the funerals. They go through everything else, and we see people holding the signs. We see people outside of buildings. We see the things on the news, but no one actually talks about it. So it's literally just like a clue for us to look at and notice. I just think it's really interesting that they haven't acknowledged it. Like,
right. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's more of just like, I think it's really cool how they are doing a lot more visual, like, let me show you, not tell you. And I like that in media. So when things don't have to be outright told to me and like, I guess, fed to me, I like when things are more subtle like that. So
it's a really different approach to things, and this kind of attention, this media attention, is forcing Joe to he's getting pressured, right? Because he ghosted the stalker went and did what they did, and kind of comes back with, "Do I now have your attention?" It's just like, oh my God, like how the tables have turned. It's so crazy, because when you hear Joe, and Joe's narrating obviously all these episodes, and he's talking about like, you sick, twisted, and it's like, Joe, do you realize that you've like, are you really not that self-aware? I mean,
he's super disillusioned with himself.
Yeah, I mean, I think the argument can be made, and I want to maybe do this one day, a character study on Joe Goldberg / Jonathan Moore, because I think he's just a fascinating character, one that appears to be both sociopathic and psychopath. But it's just kind of funny how, because he's now being hunted as opposed to being the hunter, it's kind of like, you are a sick, twisted motherfucker. And pretty much echoing whatever Guinevere Beck had said in season 1 to him, and he just can't see it. But continuing with this episode, when they being the cops are visiting Kate, Joe sees this because he can look into the window. He also gets a visit from those same policemen. Frank, kind of, what were your impressions with him being able to think quick on his feet and spinning whatever he spun about? Maybe he wasn't the last person to see Malcolm.
Oh man, this is what he does. Like he's always 3 or 4 steps ahead of everyone else. You saw the same thing in season 3 with Love and him when the cops came and saw them at their house about the Mr. Realtor. He just has this uncanny ability to always think about a multitude of scenarios and being able to find an answer for all the scenarios. And in the beginning, it looked like that he was going to be a suspect because he was by far, according to Kate, the last one that Malcolm saw, and to create this rumor about him seeing, I can't remember the other guy's name, but
Simon.
Simon, and creating that conflict between Simon and Malcolm, and pretty much getting the police off his stench. It was genius. Like, he never really panics, and if he does, it's for a split second, and he gets back on course. So he's a PhD level manipulator. That's what he is.
Yeah, he might not have the legitimate professor status for teaching literature. I mean, we obviously know that he's into books and he has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to literature. But he's a master at bullshit and spinning it like just seamlessly. So yeah, you're right. He does throw the cops off the scent because, one, he said the reason that he never said anything was because he thought his work visa, there was going to be an issue, and they're like, oh, well, that's not really our department kind of thing. And then to say, okay, well, let's pin it on Simon who's dead, Simon who can't defend himself, and who was doing shady shit. But like, he provided enough information to the cops to say, hey, he was doing this to associate artists. One person is Blue Cahill, who is in rehab. She can basically vouch for me in my story, right? And so I mean, initially I was like, oh, damn you, Kate, for sending the cops to Jonathan. I was like, fuck you, bitch. Like, fuck you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't be the only one who felt that way. Marcy, like, come on, back me up here.
No, I liked that she did that because, again, it kind of puts more pressure on Joe to really have to, like, again, like you said, bullshit and think on his feet. But again, like, he did have like a solid he could have a solid response. Like, he dropped me off at home, I passed out. Like, you don't know if I'm the only one, if I'm the last one who saw him alive. Like, he supposedly left, so you can't really know for sure who was the last one to see him alive. So I was pretty impressed that he was able to just kind of lie so easily on his feet. But that's Joe's strengths.
For sure. And Amber, when it's curious to me, and I really want to know how his stalker is able to kind of like text him at the most opportune time. Like, after he's visited by the cops, he gets a message from the stalker, who's basically kind of like, I guess you could say, wanting him to admit himself or out himself as, yes, I am Joel Goldberg. And he's like, oh, you get a rise out of this, don't you? You like this. Like, what do you think of these mind games?
I'm living for it. I love it. I think it's really compelling to see somebody like Joe, who we have seen spin so many webs and fabricate so many different kinds of stories, to see somebody who is like, no, I know things, and I'm going to make you play my game. I think that's really cool, and I'm very fascinated by it. So I can't wait. Like, I'm very bad at coming up with guesses and theories. Like I love reading theories, but I cannot come up with theories about who it is on my own. So I'm just always have been terrible at it. So I'm not even going to try, but I'm really excited to see how it is. And as to how they text him at the most opportune moments, who knows? Because I mean, he's already went through his apartment like what, twice?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this episode was twice. He already went through and scoured, looked through lamps and every nook and cranny. I have no idea how this person would know those sort of things, especially like that right moment, unless they're looking through the window, which we know is his MO. Yeah, but even then, like we don't know. It could be Kate. It could be, for all we know. He can see her window. She can see his. As for anyone else who could see into the window, who knows? And then also, I think, wasn't it, Marcy, didn't you sit in there say that you found a theory that it's in his brain, that it's all in his mind?
Yeah, that's one thing that I read, that people are saying that maybe like Reese is in his mind. I think, well, obviously Joe's a very unreliable narrator anyway. One thing that I think, and I think this would be kind of lazy writing on their part, but I think he's just imagining the stalker, and it's really his conscience just saying like, oh, like, Joe, you've done all these terrible things. How could you kill all of these people, Joe? And I think that's what would be able to explain why these messages always come at the right time, like right after the students have found out about Malcolm and right after the cops come. So I think that's one of my theories. Other theory is I think it's Nadia for some reason.
Those are interesting.
Yeah, the Nadia, I think, and I'm not so sure about this one as I am that it's just like his mind, is when they're all talking in the classroom about like, oh, here's the news about Malcolm. She pulls out her phone. We don't know if she's pulling out her phone to read the stories that everybody's talking about, or if she's pulling out her phone to text him. They don't really show us what she's doing. So
interesting.
That's one theory. But yeah, we don't know who it is, but I'm thinking it's Joe feeling very like, I think it's part of Joe's like self-loathing of like, he knows he's done bad things and he's trying to be good now, but he still feels bad maybe about what he's done before.
And that's what I mean is I exactly agree with you because, and I'm sorry, I saw it very much in this episode because of the timing with those texts. And also like it's conveniently through this message system that is super encrypted and you can't go back on these messages. Like it just conveniently that, and we've seen it like how even just how he narrates, it's always putting projections out, not really realizing, hey, I'm doing this. No, it's like I had to do this because of you. I had to do this because of that. I had to do this because of this person. So he's always projecting things out. So I'm Marcy, I agree with you. I think it's his brain.
This is interesting, and I'm going to turn it to Frank in a second, but this is almost very in my head. Think of Moon Knight. Think of the multiple personality that Moon Knight has, right? As far as we've seen 3 different personalities, and this is something, so psychological within Joe himself, that being a possibility. Like, Frank, what are your thoughts on the theories that we've all kind of expressed at this point?
I think it's quite viable. I mean, this is a character that is extremely unstable. And I think season 3 gave a lot of insight to why he's unstable. I mean, listen, when you're dealing with abandonment issues and mommy issues and abuse and child neglect, these are a lot of things that he's succumbed to. And from what it looks like, he's never really dealt with. I don't think he's done therapy. And not even including that, the guy that adopted him, the guy on the bookstore.
Mooney.
That's another part of abuse that he experienced. So when you put all of that into context, I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that a lot of unresolved issues, not just from like the murders, but just from his childhood as well. Another aspect I could see it being ego. Like in the 3.5 seasons that we've seen so far, he's always been the top dog when it comes to manipulation, stalking, covering up murders. there were times when him and Love were like going back and forth competing, like, and just like who's the top dog here, who's the top mastermind here. And I think for him, he's so used to being a hunter, and now that he's the hunted, it bothers him to the standpoint of like of feeling weak. Because it's the one thing that Joe is good at, is I'm good at getting my target and executing every single time in the foundation of me protecting what I love and protecting others, whether it's delusional or not. That's what he believes. And yeah, it could a lot of it could be ego and like being a top dog in this genre of stalking and murder.
That is a very, very interesting take, and I like the theories. I have one to kind of counter the notion about Reese, but we're about to get to that moment. But
wait, real quick, I actually before we get off of the topic of that theory about it being in his mind, Brittany, the fact that you mentioned Moon Knight is actually kind of interesting, because that's what I was going towards. Is multiple personality disorder develops most of the time because of dissociation from abuse and horrifying things happening when you were a child. Yeah. It's a PTSD response that you just dissociate. You put that. So the fact that Joe did go through all that, just like you mentioned, Frank, yeah, like I would not be surprised if he developed some form of something like that to kind of take care of his own mind and things like that because of how he grew up. And also, we do see at later another point in this episode where he just doesn't remember, like it doesn't show how, like, I know we're going to talk about it later, but like after his tryst with Kate in the park, he just wakes up. Yeah, he just wakes up in her home, and it seems like the middle of the day. Like that's a really weird time to like pass out.
Yeah.
And
I mean, when it's good, I guess.
I guess, but if you're gonna pass out in the park,
I've passed out many times, not sober. I mean, I was sober, so that's when I saw that, I was
Jesus.
like, Jonathan,
true, but part of my brain is thinking like maybe he just genuinely doesn't remember that.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was weird that he woke up on her couch and she's in her bed. I'm like, why did he pass out on her couch? Like,
let's not get ahead of ourselves. We'll get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But let's go back to this story. So, as Joe, he's dealing with the stalker and trying to not out himself. Of course, he has to get ready to go to Simon's funeral, and on the way, he runs into Nadia, who's like trying to get into Malcolm's house. Basically says, hey, there's something in there that he had from me that I don't want it to go public, and me being embarrassed, et cetera, et cetera. So Joe says, hey, I'm going to help you out. Somehow he's going to, make his way into the house. We'll come back to that later. So at the funeral, though, there's a bunch of Eat the Rich headlines, and all of the Oxford gang people are there walking in one by one. And Joe's like kind of assessing them, right? Could it be Phoebe? Could it be her boyfriend, Adam? Could it be Kate herself? Like she's just trying to throw everyone off the scent. Could it be Reese? Could it be even the sister of Simon? Like he's trying to go through all of these observations and then try to like justify why each one of these people would have done it, would have been trying to blame him. And it's a lot of mind games, of course, at this point. And at some point as he's walking into the church, sorry, I couldn't think of the word, he gets bumped by someone that we don't know who is. And it's like rude. Like you just don't bump people. Like, come on. And the point that I'm trying to get to now is that to kind of debunk the theory that maybe Reese isn't real, because during this funeral, or not quite the eulogy, but Reese does stand up and speak in front of everybody. So unless this is like, unless the writers really are trying to screw with us, I really do think Reese is a real person, just like the rest of the Oxford gang. I think, he definitely has like, he could have a reason to be the suspected murderer, right? Because he's kind of from an outside world like Joe is, and what have you. But that's just my one little thing to like debunk about Reese being a figment of his imagination, or creating someone to put the blame on. So
I agree.
I also noticed when during all the in the photographer crowd, the woman from the was it episode 2? Yeah. Who seemed to kind of recognize Joe and tried to take a photo of him.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Yeah, it was her. It was still the same her. I checked. Twas her.
We got our own stalker over here. Okay.
Right?
I don't know. I thought it was something I need to pay attention to. So it's her, and she definitely noticed that she made eye contact. She saw his face. They were maybe 5 feet apart, and she took pictures of him. Again, I think her timing was off because it looked like it would have been just photos of his back, maybe like kind of
maybe profile.
Maybe, but like if this woman's trying to get a photo of Joe, like she really needs to step up her game. But she seems to recognize him. But yeah, go.
Do you think that photographer is connected to Love's family by chance? Or like them just keeping tabs on Joe?
I don't think so, because I mean the hired whatever assassin, like he dipped. You know what I'm saying? Like he dipped. So it's kind of like unless he just never reported back to them, like why would the Quinn family still be on the lookout for Joe? You know what I mean?
The fixer, he did say he was tired.
Fixer.
And he wanted to retire and just go on about his way. So
that's true.
It could be a disconnect between him not reporting back and like the family or the estate sending another, spy or investigator to like keep tabs on Joe. Because to me, I'm surprised that because Joe faked his death in season 3. You would think if the family found out about it, they would want to retaliate in some form or fashion because the daughter died because of it. So
maybe they want Joe to think that the fixer retired, but he really didn't, and maybe he has other things in mind. Like, who knows? I mean, I don't think we can rule out anything at this point.
I like that.
That could be a thing.
I think
behind this.
I think the photog is probably affiliated with the Joe stalker. Like kind of keeping tabs and. But I don't know. Now I'm saying this out loud. Getting updated photos of what Joe looks like would help the Quinn family try to locate him and, out him and that kind of. I don't know. But there is obviously something about this photog because we've seen her twice and seems very, very fixated on him. Or could she be the murderer?
Anyone's guess.
It's anybody's guess, yeah. Frank, let's talk about Lady Phoebe's bodyguard, the older man. His name is Vic. He seems to kind of put some sort of pressure on Joe during the wake at the club during the daytime. What did you make of that conversation between the two?
Vic comes off as a guy who's very gracious for the position that Phoebe's family has put him in. And I think for Vic, he doesn't want anything jeopardizing his stature in state in his family. And it was episode 2 where Joe found old buddy getting a golden shower and then Vic catching up to him. I think that was more so of like Vic just being curious, like, why are you here? Like, ever since you've been here, you've been doing weird shit. Don't fuck with my nut. Don't fuck with my nut, dog. Like, and I think that's what it is. I think Vic just doesn't. He has a secure position. He's well off. And he's living a good life. He doesn't want anything jeopardizing that. And I think he just finds Joe as an oddball or Jonathan as an oddball, and he wants to get down to the bottom of it. Especially with all these deaths going on around. I mean, Vic seems like a guy who's been around. He's not a young pup. He's a veteran, and being around all these rich people and like all the weird shit that they do, for this to catch on Vic's radar says a lot, because these rich motherfuckers do a lot of weird shit. Vic has a particular interest in Joe, which I think Vic's he's high key. He's a veteran, man. He knows when something's not right. So I think that's him more just checking Joe.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I still think it's interesting. Vic, threatening Joe after Joe discovered Adam's secret about the golden showers and what have you. It's like you're hired by Lady Phoebe and her family. Like, why the fuck are you protecting Adam? Like,
because Adam is with Phoebe, and he doesn't want Phoebe upset or Phoebe was up. Well, we won't get too far ahead, but like,
yeah.
He doesn't want anything jeopardizing Phoebe's happiness, because in turn they can jeopardize his state as well. And protecting all the family secrets and all the inner circle secrets, I think is probably up in the highest regard of Vic's protection. So
that is very fair.
I think he knows. Vic knows. Yeah. Nick's he knows all that dirty shit. Like,
but I thought what I thought was cool was that we've said many times already in this episode is that Joe's really good at like sweet talking people and just getting past their radar, except him. Like he reads him wrong multiple times. Like there are multiple instances that he reads him wrong. And I think that's kind of interesting that seeing that.
I agree. And there's another person in kind of more or less after the scene who kind of reads Joe and calls it correctly. And Marcy, I'm going to turn this to you because this leads into the discussion about Kate and Joe or Jonathan. He feels, of course, that Kate is in danger because the stalker had said that bitch sent the police on you. Like, what are you going to do about it? You should kill her. It's a life or death situation, which is Joe's excuse to the stalker, saying, well, if I was Joe or if I had done these things, it was because I had no other choice. So because of that, Joe feels the need to protect Kate. And by doing so, he's going to stalk her. Right. So walk us through, of course, him following her to the tavern and everything else that plays out after that.
Yeah. I mean, well, he's back to his old tricks. I don't think Joe can really leave the old life behind, even if, he's Jonathan Moore now and he's in jolly old England. Right. Like he meets her outside, like their place. He follows her to the tavern and, they kind of have like this back and forth where she's like, okay, like you need to stop. Like basically like, you're weird, but also she really tells him she really confides in him about how she has always had to be really stoic, and she could never show her feelings because that's how her mom raised her. So
her mom's American too, which I thought was weird. That's more British type quality,
like stiff upper lip type of thing.
Yeah.
But, she really confided in him and like was vulnerable, and then again, like he continues to follow her, right? Like they go and they bury the finger or whatever. So I don't think he can.
Oh, you're getting a little ahead of yourself at that point. They go to the garden.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Yes. They go to the garden and she's basically like, stop following me. Like women, we can take care of ourselves. I don't need you, Joe. Thank you. So he follows her into this, he called it a secret garden, but everybody can see it. So it's not a very secret garden. I was just like, okay, Joe, sure. So they have sex, even though he was like, nope, I don't want to fall in love with another chick. Like I'm trying to be better. Yeah. Like she literally like falls into his arms. And then they fall on the floor and, she's like, okay, don't kiss me because you might fall in love with me. So I'm like, okay.
I love how she's so sure of herself.
Yeah.
Reading him that way.
Yeah.
Because now he's
but is she wrong?
No, he's gonna get obsessed like he always does.
Yeah.
So she's doing him a favor, in other words.
Yeah. And she called him right too. She's just like, you're romantic. Like you don't want to just have sex. You want to find love. Like she read him like in a book. It was great.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So with him trying not to be obsessed with Kate, do you think we've seen the last of Marianne?
That's a really great question, just because the first episode, we got the reason why he's not in Paris, right? Mm-hmm. He followed her to London, encountered her in London, and to prove a point that in her mind, he's a murderer, he let her go and, obviously didn't kill her per Elliot. and let her go back to her life with her daughter, right? And so I think in many ways, because he's so heartbroken by her, he's had to let her go. But it's not to the point where I feel like Kate has entirely replaced that void that is Marion. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. So my question is, do you think we see her again this season, Marianne?
I don't. In part 1, most likely not. Part 2, I think we could.
I think if we're gonna see her again, it might be in another season.
This season.
Because I think Joe's going to fixate on this and the killer. Because currently, aside from the first episode, like where we get all that explanation, the new you that in Joe's mind is the killer who's trying to frame him. It hasn't been Marianne for a while, for a minute. So
like
in the first
1
episode,
minute.
yeah, for the first episode, he was like, all of his internal monologue was to Marianne. But then now that this killer is in the way and everything's happening, it's turned in that the killer is the new you in the dialogue. And
Yeah.
I think that combined with Kate, because yeah, he's going to go into his old ways. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Marianne later, but not this season.
I don't think we'll see her at all.
Oh,
what I think happened was that Joe told us he didn't kill her, but again, Joe is unreliable. So didn't.
Oh my God! Plot twist.
I love it.
I'm thinking like maybe he did kill her because again, like he's killed people he loves, right? Like he's killed Quinn and he killed, you know, many people that he's loved. So he told us he didn't kill her. Maybe he did kill her. And then after that, the guilt kicked in. And that's when the stalker started sending him messages. So that's where like I'm thinking.
You cracked it.
I think Joe's a monster, but I don't think Mary had a kid, a daughter.
I was just going to bring that up too.
Joe killed the baby daddy just so she could be with her daughter. I don't think.
But he also abandoned his own son.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Because he knew his son was not going to be safe with him.
Yeah,
he was self-aware enough for that. He trusted the gay couple to raise his son and love his son the way that he couldn't. I mean, even Lev said it, like, as she lay there dying, like, we're perfect together. We're just bad for Henry.
Yeah.
So I think there's enough self-awareness within himself to that degree. Can't be a father. And I couldn't imagine him taking away the mother of this child. Like, like Frank said, he's a monster, but I don't think he's capable of that.
Especially after going through the whole rigmarole of killing the baby dad in the first place, just so she can have that daughter with her. So
exactly. I 100% agree. 100%. So let's continue with talking about Kate and Joe. They do the nasty in the secret garden. That's really not so secret because your boy Vic goes and watches them as a creeper, does. And this goes back to Kate's house, like what you and Marcy, you and Amber were talking about, how we see Joe is on the couch. He's passed out on the couch. She's in her bed. And I kind of want to say, like, the reason for that is very similar to the reason Kate said to Joe not to kiss her. Like, we're going to fall in love. We lie in the same bed. We're going to fall in love, kind of thing. So let's keep our distance. I need you for the D, but I don't need you to go to sleep. I'm just calling it like I say. Frank, why are you laughing like this? Come on.
She needs him for the D, not for the Z.
Bingo.
Yeah.
That should be a bumper sticker.
Oh my God. I need to coin that. Oh man. So yeah, this is how we end up in Kate's home, which gives Joe that opportunity to go and locate the letter, note, whatever it was. Why am I out of focus? That Nadia had left for Malcolm, and in Malcolm's office, there's like this really obnoxious like painting of him, and he's got all the letters behind. I mean, he's got letters, like it's a stack, right? It's a stack of letters, and Kate basically discovers him and says, you know, I need you to leave. And he's like, listen, I keep saying this because I feel it's true. You're not safe. This is not safe. And she's like, I would rather be cut up into 1,000 tiny pieces and spend one more second alone with you. And I'm like, well, that was oddly specific.
Yeah, a little bit.
I'm like, are we foreshadowing something here? Like, because we've already seen him cut up her dead boyfriend. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
What the heck? Anyway.
It makes me wonder too. Why was Kate with Malcolm? Kate comes from money. Kate's very influential. She gives
the D. I don't know.
I don't understand. Like Malcolm seems like a degenerate idiot. And Kate can do so much better.
Maybe she liked the Prince Albert. Who knows? Like,
yeah, I guess so.
Forgot
Royal
about that.
adjacent.
I didn't want to be reminded.
Well, now you are. We all are.
Royal adjacent.
Yeah. So Kate tells Joe to leave, and he does. So then the stalker takes advantage of the situation to kind of try to prove this point that, hey, I know you, Joe. Like, I figured you out. You like to kill because you get aroused by it, right? And I'm putting that more politely than what was actually said. Because Joe's like outside Kate's home. He's like waiting for her to like make a move, and when she gets into her car to go somewhere, he follows. But the stalker has said, like, I'm gonna prove it to you. So when we see that Kate goes to the crypt where Malcolm's pinky is interred, it's just this little box. And I liked what the inscription said. It said, once met, never forgotten. I'm like, this dude was full of himself, right? Like, without a doubt. Yep. And so she's having like this conversation with the pinky box and says, you know, you made me forget my family. You made me laugh. You actually love me. And she's like, surely that's worth a tear or two. And she can't do it. Like, she cannot produce like a tear at all. And Amber, like, did this make you feel some kind of way towards Kate about she can acknowledge her feelings towards Malcolm, but she can't express them in the fashion of tears?
I thought it was interesting. I think it's something that I think it was refreshing in the fact that we don't really see that in these kinds of shows, I guess. Like, usually if a significant other dies, they're just a sobbing puddle on the floor. So I thought it was an interesting perspective because we don't really see any variation from that except this. Like, I thought it was actually very interesting to see that she and we already have the reasoning why, you know, because of how she was raised and stuff like that. So we do have her. She seems very emotionally mature to the fact that she knows how she feels. She just can't express it, and she feels bad that she can't express it. Yeah. She wants to, but she can't. And I think that also contributes to how well she's able to read Joe. Just being able to, because he, like how she pinned it on him, like, you were a very emotional child, weren't you? Like, she can.
Like, it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I think it was more just a way for her. I thought it was just interesting as in a character development sense.
Yeah, no. Frank, what were your thoughts on Kate in this moment when she's expressing her feelings?
I felt nothing. Only because no. Let me explain though, because when you look at all the rich kids in this group, they all have like a psychological like defunction about them, and I think that's what they all have in common. I think that's what all brings them together as a friend group, if you want to call them friends. So for me, it's hard for me to empathize with like rich people and their problems, because like they often are like they don't feel for like the general population. Kate looks like she does, but I don't trust Kate. I feel like Kate's a fucking maniac, because like someone who never cries, and somebody who's just like is that mean or has that kind of side to her, tells me she's hiding something. So when I saw that, I was like, "Bitch, you are hiding something. I don't trust you at all." She doesn't seem innocent. It's all these characters are multi-layered and have some type of like dysfunction about them that disconnects them from the rest of the world. So I think there's more to Kate than we think, and I think it's going to be unveiled in part 2.
And Marcy, you know, at this point, out of the Oxford gang, Kate's had the most screen time. Of course, she's Joe's neighbor. She's the ex-girlfriend or the girlfriend of the deceased. What's your take on Kate at this point?
I'm kind of with Frank. I feel like there's something shady about Kate, and then like a couple more episodes, we kind of learn a little bit more about Kate that kind of informs us a little bit more, but I still think there's something shady about her. And I'm wondering if maybe this is not a tactic that the writers use to get us all to think that like Kate's got to be the killer or she's got to be the stalker, and then like come from behind and say like it was Connie or Lady Phoebe, who like Phoebe they try to paint as like somebody super sweet, and Connie they haven't like really talked about a lot at all. So I'm wondering if that's something that they're trying to do. But I mean, I kind of empathize with Kate. Like I am a very emotional person. I was a very emotional child. But after you've been through a lot of things, like at some point you're like, yeah, I don't have any more tears for like this shit. Like, yeah, like I feel bad about this, but like I can't cry about it. So I kind of understand a little bit. I mean, because Phoebe was crying. She was saying, like, if you find any bits of my friend Malcolm, like, let us know. He liked corgis and he liked soup, and she's a blubbering mess, and like, on the TV just saying all these things, and Kate's just kind of like, whatever.
Bottled up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Phoebe is just letting the emotions flow, and Kate's very bottled.
That's why I seen Adam at. So the guy who plays Adam was in Euphoria.
Yes.
Shit. Okay.
Squirrel.
I've been trying to figure out where the fuck have I seen this guy at. Okay, he's in Euphoria. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Back to our regularly scheduled programming. So as Kate is leaving the crypt, Joe, of course, who had followed her there, he's like looking to get out of the crypt because there's only one way in, one way out kind of thing. And this is curious because he gets bested in a way by Vic, who followed the two. Vic's got a gun, the back of Joe's head, of course, and he searches Joe's person and finds Malcolm's pinky ring. So, of course, in Vic's mind, he thinks, hey, I knew there was something off about this professor. Now I have proof that he's the eat the rich killer, basically. And it wouldn't be you if there wasn't like some sort of struggle, of course. And, we've talked about how Joe's got a set of skills. Well, of course, killing someone is a skill set that he has acquired, and he does strangle Vic. So R.I.P. Vic. I do have to say, when Vic shot at Joe and the bullet went through the shoe, and they're both kind of looking at the shoe and they're like, oh, what? And Joe's like, well, that would have hurt if I had my toes there. I was like, that would be an interesting conversation to have with a woman. Like, why don't you have two? Why you're missing two of your toes? See, what had happened was.
Don't worry about it.
None of your business.
What stays in Vegas? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
There you go.
Or in this case, Madre Linda. But anyway, so Joe, like I said, kills Vic. He obviously knows that Vic's body can never be found. He narrates that while he's burying the body in Simon's, what do you call it? Tomb, I guess.
Golden covered.
Yeah.
Golden, yes.
Covered casket.
Stupid. That he said that Vic wrote like a resignation letter to Lady Phoebe, and all is well, right? Like, talk about thinking on your feet.
Right.
or what's left of your feet, and being able to that's good, right? Being able to just kind of cover up those holes right there. So the fact that the stalker / murderer is trying to say, Joe, you're just like me. You enjoy killing. Like this is who you are. And Joe gets mad. Like he gets batshit mad. Marcy, like, what did you make of that? Because obviously we've seen Joe get very furious, but the fact that this stalker is saying to him, this is who you are. And Joe's like, I do not enjoy this.
Yeah. I think, again, it goes back to Joe's self-loathing of, before he's like, I've had to kill to either like protect or, whatever, like he tries to rationalize why he's done all these terrible things. I think maybe after meeting Marianne, he's like, well, now I've got to like be better. And now he's on this quest to be better. And like, I'm going to be good. I'm not going to sleep with anybody. I'm not going to get obsessed. I'm not going to kill anybody. But he still has had to like chop up Malcolm and dispose of his body. He's had to kill Vic. So I think he's just very angry at himself for having to revert back to his old ways. So that's where like all that rage is coming from. Like he can't stand himself and what he does.
Yeah,
I agree.
No, I agree. Go ahead, Amber.
Well, I agree with her because I feel like he also just doth protest too much. Like we know that he, in his mind, he does not get any satisfaction about it, but there are other ways, man. You don't have to like leave a trail of dead bodies everywhere you go. There's other avenues. So like maybe he's like his buttons are obviously being pushed, but maybe it's just him seeing like having a little bit of a self-aware moment. Like, hey, what part of that is actually true and what part of it am I actually willing to admit to? But
Frank, what are your thoughts about Joe in this moment and trying to convince the murderer or stalker that he doesn't enjoy this?
I agree with Marcy. I think he does. I think I don't think Joe's ever been true to himself. And I think this is all a front to try to like save face to the people that he cares about. But Marianne said Marianne was dead on in episode 1. Like, you're a murderer. This is who you are. Try to like mask it with like you caring for us and doing the right thing and all this, but this is your nature. And even to add to that, we've only have gone back as far as him on screen killing Gwen. Remember, he killed the bookstore guy. He killed the owner. He killed his mama's boyfriend. Like these are murders. He's been murdering people since he was a kid, since he was like 10 years old or 12 years old. So this is a lot of unresolved issues that he has not been able to cope with. And I think a part of him wants to get caught. I think he's looking for an end in a way. I really do. And now that he's facing the music with this guy or gal that's stalking him, I think that this is a mirror image to where I think he's looking for an end for himself, but he doesn't have the heart to do it for himself. Yeah. I think someone else has to put the end to him.
It's kind of like when somebody's cheating on people and they want the other person to catch them because they don't want to be the ones that like come out and do it. They're like, well, I'm just gonna like cheat on them until they find out, and then they can break up with me. So yes, don't ask me how I know. That's another story for another podcast.
That's an after hours late night with the watchers. We got some vino, got some man. Anyway, so I think it's interesting how you all kind of bring up this whole Joe in a way not being accountable or not holding himself accountable, right? Because instead of trying to prove that he's a decent person by like fighting with this stalker / murderer, he's going to take this opportunity to kind of set up the murderer stalker, just how like the murder stalker, wow, the stalker is trying to set up Joe, right? So Joe's like, okay, are you doing this because you're lonely? Like,
Right.
do you need a friend? Like, what is this about you? And maybe you just like, you need someone in your life. And so Joe's going to play this game, right? He's going to say what he thinks the stalker murderer person wants to hear, and finally says, "You're right. That was exhilarating."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I think you went a little over the top by saying exhilarating. I mean, like, you can kind of read people after a while about, hey, I think this is how they'd want me to respond to a certain situation, and this is how I'm going to phrase it. But like, I think that was just way too over the top, like way too quick, because he kept fighting with this person saying, no, I'm not Joe. No, I didn't do these things. No, I don't enjoy murdering people, to go from all that and be like, you know what? That was exhilarating. Loved it. My dick is hard. You know,
Right.
like I loved it. You know, that's what he was saying.
Yeah.
That's what the stalker was saying. Frank, don't walk away like that. Like I this isn't brand new. I just said it. Okay,
I lost my train of thought.
That's more for Watchers After Dark.
There we go. Moving on. So after Joe sends that message, nothing from the stalker. Like, he's now been ghosted. You know, we're kind of going through this cycle of Joe will ghost this person. Mm-hmm. Now this person has ghosted Joe, and it's just like, well, what the fuck? You know, like and then he starts questioning himself. Did I go over the top? Did we move too quickly? And then finally the stalker sends a message. I think we need to meet face to face. And Joe's like, yay. So he fell for the trap. Yay. And so one stipulation is he tells the stalker, hey, leave Kate out of this. She's mine. And I wanted to pose this question to all of you. Like, what was Joe trying to say? Like, he actually himself is trying to say about Kate versus what maybe the stalker person thought Joe was saying. I'll start off with Amber. Okay, I put her on the spot. so like I think there's maybe two meanings in this phrase of Kate is mine.
Yeah.
I think that Joe was saying, like, in his head, she's mine to deal with, like mine to protect, or mine to, you know, do as I see fit. Whereas I feel he's saying that to the stalker person is, I'm going to take care of her. Like, I'm going to kill her. So what do y'all think of that possible like explanation?
I can see it. I can see both points. My automatic, I think that Joe was intending it to say that, to get the person to think, yeah, I'm going to take care of her. I'm going to, you know, end her. Mm-hmm. So don't worry about it. Like, I think that was what he wanted the killer to think. Whether that's but I don't think he's obviously I don't think he actually meant that. So, but I don't know whether the killer is actually going to take it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Marcy, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with both you and Amber. I think he was trying to like make the killer think like, she's mine, I'm going to deal with her. But maybe like that's what he wanted to mean. But I think deep down, like, he's meaning like, she's mine. Like, now I'm bonded to her. Now, like, I need to protect her. Now, like, we've had sex and now I fell in love. Even if we didn't kiss, like, I fell in love and now she's going to be my next target.
Joe. Frank, any thoughts on this matter?
I don't think Joe would try to risk trying to trick this stalker, because first off, the stalker knows where he lives at, been through his crib multiple times. I think what Joe meant by that was, look, leave her out of this. I'll deal with her as far as protecting her. She won't be a problem. She won't fuck up whatever plans you may have in the grand scheme of things. Because I don't think it'll be safe for Joe to like deliberately try to trick him by saying, I'll kill her later, knowing damn well he or she knows every step of the way where Joe's at, what he's doing, what he's up to. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Kate, I wonder how she would have taken that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I swear, all these mind games, because it seems like the little interaction that Joe has had with every person from this Oxford gang, there was like a motive, or there was like a hate towards Malcolm, at least to kill Malcolm. Why? Maybe not all of them shared the same feelings towards Simon, but the fact that Simon was doing shady shit and Malcolm knew about it, and he was going to blackmail Simon. You know what I'm saying? Like there is motive for sure. It could be anyone within that Oxford gang or multiple people working together.
But I think they're all shady though. Like, even Adam, like he wants to marry lady,
especially Adam.
Yeah, like he wants to marry her for status and for money, and like I think they all have issues as far as like ulterior motives of that's just who they are. And I think so far we've just seen Simon and Malcolm's part, you know. But I think the whole circle is going to be unveiled as far as like what they want. I mean, and you see in episode 4 and 5, as far as some of the other characters in that circle, like their ulterior motives. So
yeah, for sure. So to wrap up this episode, Nadia visits Joe to get the letter back, and he basically kind of offers some sort of guidance in a way, because Nadia claims that she's never known anyone who's died, and like, when will it be okay? And he's like, that's different for everybody. Like, it's, you care for someone or you love someone, and it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's just, it's not acceptable, like in the context of her relationship with her professor, right? Like that's just not socially acceptable in a way. And he thinks he's getting a text message again from the stalker, but it turns out being Phoebe, who pretty much summons him to Sundry House Club. And when he goes to the club, he sees like the group of people, and enter the 2 officers that he met with earlier in this episode. And they ask him for the briefest of his time, and he puts on that charm and he says, of course, anything to help. And I was like, wow, like what a cliffhanger, because the look that all of like the Oxford gang gives to Joe when he walks in, it's like this look of distaste. Like, oh, you're here. Like, what the fuck are you doing here? And even Phoebe's kind of has like this posture and just kind of like, kind of situation. Of course, all drinks in hand, and they're probably loaded, but like what did y'all make of that cliffhanger with everyone in the room and the cops? Whoever would like to go first. Amber.
Okay. I really didn't have any worry that Joe was going to be able to sweet talk his way out of it. Because, again, I mean, we're going to say it 5 times every episode, at least, that he is so good at just weaving those webs. He's a spider. He kills things and he weaves webs. This is what he does. So he already charmed pants off of those cops anyway. So I didn't worry about the boy. I didn't worry about him, but the looks that everyone was giving him, though, I was just kind of like, well, obviously we think one of those people might be the killer. So, the Nadja. So, like, this is, like, I just thought it was interesting to see maybe the killer, if it is among that group, and if they were in attendance, they could be whispering little things to the other people to try and turn that lens onto Joe. That's what I thought, but that's what I interpret those looks for. But yeah, I didn't worry about him. He's got them.
Marcy, what about you?
I mean, these cops aren't maybe doing a great job. Because now on like every cop show too, we see that they look at like the CCTV and like the closed circuit TV, and they're able to like see you like cameras and like, oh, we, security cameras from like the streets show that Malcolm didn't ever leave Joe's or Jonathan's apartment. So I'm like, why aren't you using like all of these other resources that are widely available now to like figure out what the hell is happening? Like, feels like they're doing everything very old school. So that's my thing with the cops. I'm like, what the hell is happening? Like on SVU, they would have solved this. Like episode, like on Murder She Wrote, like she would have like figured it out. Like these cops kind of suck.
Yeah. Frank, round it out for us.
Everybody just looks high and drunk in that. I don't think anybody's expecting anything of Joe, to be honest. Like maybe later on, but I think overall they just look very just like unaware. I think the more like the more bothered by why the cops are there than to me expecting Joe of like some wrongdoing of some sort.
I can see that. Well, that will wrap up the episode. So final thoughts, everyone, on episode 3, Eat the Rich. Amber.
I liked it. It's like we said in the beginning, it got the ball rolling, getting us more invested in the plot, more twists and turns, more theories. I just really liked it, and I am really excited to see where the story is going.
Marcy.
I agree. It kind of is setting up for the next 2 episodes, which are more, I thought they were more fun, more Knives Out type of vibe-ish. So I'm really excited for us to recap those next week.
For sure. Frank.
I mean, I'm biased, man. This shit's fucking raw. I love it, man. I think it's so easy for a show like this to get very redundant after a while, but then like you add in this murder mystery and really like turning Joe's character more of an anti-hero, more of the hunted and hunter. It's a great piece to the storyline, man. I can't wait for 4 and 5 and the rest of the season.
So real quick on this, and then we'll wrap. I wanted to pose, because of the change of plot and putting Joe in the seat of being the hunted, do you think we're approaching maybe the end of the series and maybe just Joe's ultimate demise? Based on
the interviews I've seen from Penn Badgley, man, he seemed like he's kind of at a wit's end of this character. I think playing a character, and then he's a father now too. Like I think season 3 was airing, he had just had his son, and I think it takes so much out of an actor to play a character like this, because it's such emotionally jarring to play such a disruptive, unstable character, and how it does not affect the rest of your life, especially in fatherhood, and I don't know if he's married or not, but like in relationships as well. So I think it takes a lot out of you. I'll be surprised if it goes beyond another season.
I agree with you, Frank, especially because this season he had already requested them to like drastically cut his sex scenes. He just didn't really want to do that anymore. So I think if this goes on for another season, maybe we'll have another killer. Maybe we'll have another Joe, and Joe will, just die or be killed or, just kind of bow out. But I don't think Penn Badgley would come back for another season, just because also I think like it weighs a lot on him what like shows like You do in like society, where we have like such propensities to maybe idealize serial killers. So I think he's very intentional about, just being like, okay, this is just a show. Joe is a terrible person, right? Like, don't fall in love with him because he sucks. So I don't think
kind of already did. We're past the point of no return. Amber, what are your thoughts about maybe we're getting to the end of the series?
I agree. I also like how we were mentioning earlier that he kind of might want to be caught, like that. It's even if it's subconsciously, or just realize like, hey, I'm done. If I have to be done because I forcibly have to be done, so be it. And yes, he, as an actor, he has done a lot of like skit videos like about the character too. So like just saying like, hey guys, like this is a problem. Don't fixate on this, because Marcy, like what you said, everyone really likes those kinds of characters. And I think a lot of it is because in a story, it's very, very easy to romanticize the bad guy, especially in our generations.
Hello,
like,
Daemon Targaryen.
Yeah, like it is we have a weakness, and I think that is something that we do need to be aware of. Like, yeah, some villains are like, you do you, I'm not going to yuck anyone's yum, but like we shouldn't, he's very aware of the fact that we should not be romanticizing something so close to reality.
Yeah.
And it does weigh heavily on him because of him asking for fewer sex scenes, and he's like, because it affects him, and I wouldn't be surprised if he if this was nearing the end of Joe's story.
So I'm just going to put it out there, not that I have any reason to believe it to be true, but because they split this season into 2 parts, I'm curious if maybe part 2 will be Joe's final part in this series. Not that they've, of course, marketed this as the final season or that kind of thing. It would be very interesting if they took that route and then ultimately not bring in a season 5 to conclude. But we'll just have to wait and see. So, Frank, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I was just reading his bio. I didn't know him and Blake Lively dated. Go young man, go.
Wait, really?
Years. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for a long time.
That's go young man, go, man.
He can get it. So that will wrap up today's episode, season 4, episode 3 of Netflix series You. Be sure, if you haven't done so already, to join us for our next live stream, which will be next week. We will provide details as soon as we can iron those out. Also, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and hit the like button here. It helps out our algorithm. And also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Watchers Basement. You can also use the same hashtag to help grow our audience. We are on the road to 500 subscribers, right, Frank? That's what you kind of put it out there. You manifested that.
That's the goal, 500, man. Let's get it.
Let's do it. And lastly, you can check out our audio podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, thanks to Anchor.fm. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating. So once again, thank you to everyone who joined us for today's episode. We really appreciate you being here. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So join us next week for episodes 4 and 5, therefore rounding out part 1 of You. For Frank, for Marcy, for Amber, I am Brittany. We'll see y'all next time.